You are listening to New Europe Institute Free Seas 14 Talks podcast.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eugeniusz Romer. I work for the Institute of New Europe. Today we are discussing Free Seas initiative with my guest, Dr. Tomasz Pawłuszko, also from the Institute. Welcome, Tomasz. So nice to have you here.
Welcome. Thank you. Good morning. Good evening, everyone.
And at the beginning, I would like to ask you about how well known is this initiative in Poland amongst decision makers, amongst politicians, among people who are in power?
Well, I think the peak of the interest in the Three Seas initiative was between 2016 and 2018 when there was a kick-off this initiative. Now it's quite a specific issue for specialists and, of course, politicians interested in the foreign policy and the development policies. So I think that this is quite well known among Polish elites. However, there is a kind of contradictory approach towards it because we have more conservative parties which are interested more in the regional cooperation, and we have liberal and left parties which are focused mostly on European mainstream and cooperation with France and Germany. So I think, yes, this issue, I mean, the Three Seas initiative is popular among Polish elites, but the attitude of politicians in this case differ.
So consider what you just said. Do you think that Poland is a leader of this initiative or should perceive itself like as a leader of Free Seas initiative?
Well, Poland looks like a natural leader because of the large economy, the biggest economy in the region. And this project is about economy, about modernization of infrastructure, about the modernization of cybersecurity, about logistics, transportation. So there are so many so-called low politics issues in there. And it shows that the biggest capacity in this region, if we talk about economic cooperation, Poland has. And what is more, there is also European context within the European Union. It also means that this so-called coalition of the region, which has a specific goal to overcome the historical peripherality, it also gives us some kind of perspective of a leader because we are developing very fast, one of the fastest growing economies in the world in the latest 30 years. So that's a big success. And that's why sometimes experts say that Poland is a regional leader, but this approach is not very popular among the politicians and diplomats for obvious reasons.
Yes, and how popular this position is amongst the diplomats from the other countries, not Poland, like Czech Republic, Hungary, and so on. Do you think the other countries, they perceive Poland as a leader, or maybe they are afraid and maybe they consider it as some kind of megalomania?
Well, I did a couple of interviews during the last few months preparing a report for our institute. I called it the Three Seas, the region building. So I discussed many of issues you mentioned with Lithuanian, Latvian, Romanian, Slovakian, Czech leaders, elites, think tankers, entrepreneurs, and so on. And of course, there are some risks they mention. For example, they are afraid of Poland's domination. So there's one side, leadership, and the other side is domination. So some of them say that, oh, is it really an international project or just Polish? Yeah. So that's the case because they are dependent somehow on development of our policies, especially in the age of war, Russian-Ukrainian war, and the logistics and the economy of the region is really based on Polish performance. So yes, they are looking at us, they are looking at Poland, they are looking at discussions in Poland, Polish regional policies, development policies, security policy. But at the same time, they are focused also on other formats. So I think that's okay.
And in terms of energy sector, because Free SI was also established to cooperate in this sector, do you think that we could give a good example of how to be independent, how to, let's say, buy products from different countries, different sources?
Yes, our energy supplies were so diversified in the last few years. Like 10 years ago, we could have a completely different discussions than today, just because of these effective policies driven by few Polish governments, and how to be independent from Russian natural resources and energy resources. So I think we made it, and that's a good example of becoming independent, energetically independent in today's era, especially when we talk about the green revolution within the EU. So that was the first step to become independent. And now there will be a second step, maybe within Free Seas initiative, how to develop new renewable resources, new kinds of energy, and how to modernize our economies and regional development. So energy is the core of any kind of economic cooperation, no doubt.
And you mentioned the war in Ukraine because it's also highly influenced the energy sector. So do you think this situation, which is obviously very sad and terrifying, but will it somehow facilitate those things that you were talking about, this cooperation in terms of renewable energy, for example?
Well, we all agree that the age of Russian domination in an energy sector in Europe is over. For years, I think that most of people I interviewed during the last few months could agree on that. But at the same time, we are trying to strengthen our cooperation with Ukraine, with Belarus, with our neighbors, which is really connected with the Polish ULB doctrine defined a few decades ago by Jerzy Giedroyć. And this is a really important moment now for strategic thinkers in Poland. So how to design our relations for decades, because these processes like energy modernization, it also means a new kinds of industries. It also means new kinds of innovations. It also means support for different branches. So if we talk about the war issues, it complicates a lot, because we have to focus on the things which are not traditionally economic policies, but we have to focus on economic security. So the stability of the economy. And Ukraine has serious problems with the stability of the economy because of the war. As we all can see, Russians tend to continue their offensive. They don't want to step back. They don't want to stop this war. So it will take a lot of time, and we have to be prepared how to promote efficient cooperation, because during the war, there's no time to make inefficient decisions. And that's a huge challenge for our decision makers.
And you say that we should establish our relations for decades in the region. So but there are some countries within the initiative that are a little bit reluctant to engage themselves more actively. So what do you think should be done to encourage them?
Well, I was thinking about it for a long time, and I've been thinking, and I asked my interviews and my guests what to do with that. And I heard two contradictory visions, I could say. The first one is we need more politics, yeah, because politics is about governing, and governing is about creating institutions and managing institutions. The best institution you have, the best control you have. So that was one way of thinking. So we need more cooperation, intergovernmental cooperation, because Free Seas Initiative is a presidential format mostly. And most of regional policies and development policies.
Do you think we should also establish, for example, a secretariat, which will be a platform of cooperation, political cooperation?
Yeah, that's a good point. For example, so that's the basics. In order to organize summits, to coordinate prime minister's policies, not only president. So that was the first case. The other answer I heard was the quite opposite vision. The less politics, the better, because we have to build groupings of stakeholders from different branches, and they are more effective than politicians. So it is to support other actors than the government agencies. So to support business, support academies, to train local leaders, to train a lot of maybe bottom-up initiatives that could support political visions. And the politicians will be helpful in this, of course, but the role of the politicians would be different. So there are two types of answers, and I think that there are some possible agreements, nevertheless, because we still need politicians. They will not disappear, but at the same time, they need to be more creative. They should focus on concrete projects like railways, right? Like energy networks, like the cooperation of exporters, motorways. These projects are visible. They are not really politicized, so they can be done without any political disputes within countries. So I think that's the way. A little more institutions and far more stakeholders from different branches than politics. So that was the outcome of the reports we've done. And I think that could be a basic line of answer.
But as far as I know, these platforms, they have been already operating, like the Forum of Business of the Three Seas Initiative, or the fund, which was supposed to be established by politicians, but non-political, right? So do you think these initiatives, they were successful?
I think it's too early to say if they were successful or not. We have to give them some time. The crucial fact is that the most of the investment projects will be, for sure, financed by governments within the state budgets. So any additional funds, like the Three Seas Initiative Fund or the similar funds, are just supportive to most of the investment. If you look at the Via Carpathia road in Poland, S19, so it's mostly financed by the Polish government. So that's why the coordination of government policies are so important, because it is quite easier to talk within a group of 5 decision makers than just to make some announcements or meeting once a year during the annual summits, and that's mostly not really effective.
Tomasz, I would like to ask you about the future of this initiative. You mentioned Ukraine and Belarus. Do you think these two countries will ever be a part of this initiative? Especially, are we able to influence Belarusian opposition somehow with our soft power, with our good example as post-Soviet countries?
I think we should do that, and we are doing not enough, I would say, because Belarusian opposition and of course Ukrainians, they really need a good example. They really need help. They need good practices, legal issues, economic issues, institutions building. So that's a long process. However, both countries are threatened by Russia, and I'm afraid that we are not going to make it, because we can easily imagine a Russian invasion also in Belarus. Would the Belarusian army fight? in this scale, like the Ukrainian army. I'm reluctant in here. So Russians could easily conquer Belarus by 2030, and then we have a problem. And no good practices could help in here. So it's dependent on the Belarusians and the Belarusian society. So we just cannot influence them that much. But if we talk about Ukrainians, the situation is different because they have already seen what's going on when Russia dominates the region, and they are actually fighting a war, very destructive, and it creates the obvious perspective for Ukrainian elites and for Ukrainian society. They just come to the EU countries and try to survive. And they know that there will be no cooperation with Russia in the next decade. So that's a civilizational choice. And the Belarusians didn't really have a choice till that moment.
I think we have to stop here. Thank you very much, Tomasz, for this insightful lecture, interview, and
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, have a good day.
Thank you.
And many thanks to our viewers. Goodbye.
Bye.